The station near Kepler-88 was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It hung in space like a small moon, made of metals that caught the light from the nearby neutron star and threw it back in rainbow colors. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the window of the human ship and looked at it. She had practiced her speech 100 times. Today was the day Earth would join the galaxy. Behind her, the other members of Earth's delegation checked their suits one last time. They carried data files that held everything humanity had achieved. Clean energy from fusion reactors, computers that could think, medicine that could fix broken genes, peace treaties that had ended wars between nations. They had worked for 200 years to reach this moment. The airlock opened. Chen stepped through into the council chambers. The room was massive. Seats rose in circles around a central stage, reaching up so high she had to tilt her head back to see them all. In those seats sat representatives from 47 different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Chen could not tell which end was their head. A voice spoke in her ear through the translator device. It came from an Archon, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. The Archon's body glowed with a soft blue light. Its voice sounded like wind through empty buildings. Humans of Earth, you have come to request membership in the Galactic Council. We have reviewed your application. We have studied your world. We have examined your history. Chen felt her heart beat faster. She smiled and waited for the welcome. Your application is denied, the Archon said. The words hit Chen like cold water. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Another voice joined in. This one came from a Velkari, a species that looked like long snakes covered in silver scales. Your species is too violent. Your history shows thousands of years of war. You have only had 200 years without major conflict. That is nothing. My people have had peace for 10,000 years. But we learned from our mistakes, Chen said. Her voice shook. We are different now. We came together. We fixed our planet. We want to be part of something bigger. A third voice spoke. It belonged to a Thros, a creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. You moved too fast. You invented faster-than-light travel in only 300 years after discovering electricity. You rushed through technological development without wisdom. You are dangerous, the Archon raised one glowing limb. The chamber fell silent. The Council has made its decision. Earth's solar system will be placed under quarantine. You will not be allowed to expand beyond your outer cloud. We will install monitoring stations to make sure you follow this rule. In 500 years, if you have shown proper development, you may apply again. 500 years. Chen felt the words crush down on her. Everyone she knew would be dead. Their grandchildren would be dead. Generations would pass under this judgment. Furthermore, the Archon continued, you will submit to cultural rehabilitation programs. We will send teachers to help guide your species toward proper civilization. Something broke inside Chen. She had come here with hope. She had believed that the galaxy would see humanity's potential. Instead, they saw only fear. They treated Earth like a child that needed to be locked in a room. She straightened her back. She looked up at the Archon and spoke in a voice that did not shake. You have made a mistake today. You think our desire to join you means we need you. You are wrong. We came here offering friendship. We wanted to share what we have learned and learn from you, but you see only what we were, not what we have become. The chamber remained silent. Chen continued. You call us violent, but you forget that growth comes from struggle. You call us too fast, but you forget that necessity drives innovation. You want to teach us civilization, but you do not understand that we have already found it on our own. She turned and began walking toward the airlock. Her team followed her. Earth does not beg, she called back over her shoulder. Consider this humanity's withdrawal of application. We will not return. The human ships left the station. Behind them, the council members sat in their seats, comfortable in their decision. The Velkari representative turned to the Archon. They will comply with the quarantine? They have no choice, the Archon replied. We have technology they cannot match. They will stay in their little system and grow wiser over time. This is for their own good. The ships carrying the human delegation jumped into faster-than-light travel and vanished. On Earth, news of the rejection spread quickly. At first there was sadness. Then there was anger. But eventually there was something else. Something the Council had not expected. Determination. The President of the United Earth Government gave a speech that was broadcast to every corner of the planet. They have built a fence around our sun, she said. They think they have trapped us. But fences work both ways. While they watch us, we will grow. While they judge us, we will learn. And when we are ready, we will not ask permission to take our place among the stars. The Council's monitoring stations took up position around the edge of Earth's solar system. They scanned for any ships trying to leave. They recorded data and sent reports back to the Council. Everything seemed normal. The humans appeared to accept their fate. But on Earth and Mars and the moons of Jupiter, something was beginning. Scientists who had hoped to share knowledge with aliens now worked with new purpose. Engineers who had dreamed of exploring the galaxy now poured their energy into making Earth's system stronger and more advanced. Teachers told children that they were not prisoners. They were phoenixes waiting to rise. The years passed. The Council forgot about Earth. They had more important concerns. Border disputes between member species, trade negotiations, political arguments that had lasted for centuries. The monitoring stations continued their watch, sending automated reports that no one read carefully. In the solar system behind the fence, humanity prepared for a future the Council could not imagine. 50 years had passed since the rejection. The monitoring stations still floated at the edge of Earth's solar system, sending their reports into the void. Inside those reports, the analysts at the Galactic Council saw what they expected to see. Human ships stayed within the boundary. No attempts to cross the line. No expansion beyond the allowed zone. What the monitors did not show was what happened inside that boundary. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the observation room of the Mercury Research Station and watched the construction drones work. Millions of them, each no bigger than a coin, swarmed around the planet in perfect coordination. They were building panels that would catch energy from the sun, the Dyson swarm they called it. Already it captured 15% of the sun's total output. In 10 more years they would reach 30%. The Council thinks we need their technology, Sarah said to her assistant. They do not understand what we can do when we have to solve problems ourselves. Her assistant, a young man named Marcus, nodded. He had been born after the rejection. For him, the quarantine was just normal life. The new quantum fold drives are ready for testing, he said. Dr. Chen wants you to review them. Sarah smiled. Dr. James Chen was the grandson of Ambassador Chen Wei, the woman who had walked out of the council chambers 50 years ago. He had inherited her determination. He had spent his whole life working on faster-than-light technology. Not the kind the council used, which punched through normal space. Something different. Something better. The quantum fold drive worked by stepping sideways into another dimension, traveling there where distance meant something different, then stepping back. The math was incredibly complex, but it was faster than anything the council had, and the best part was that it left almost no trace. The monitoring stations would never see it. In the laboratories on Mars, another team was developing neural link artificial intelligence. Humans could connect their minds directly to computer systems. They could process data as fast as machines while keeping human creativity and intuition. Fighter pilots could control their ships with just their thoughts. Scientists could run simulations inside their own minds. It was technology that the Council had never even imagined. The Council believed that technology should develop slowly, carefully, with wisdom guiding every step. Humanity had learned something different. When you had no one to rely on but yourself, you innovated, or you died. The quarantine had forced Earth to become self-sufficient. Every problem had to be solved with human ingenuity alone. It made them sharper, faster, better. The first colony ship left Earth in the 37th year of the quarantine. It was called the Pioneer's Dream. It used the quantum fold drive to slip past the monitoring stations like a ghost. The Council never knew it had gone. It traveled to a star system 200 light-years away, far beyond the Council's borders, and established the first human colony outside the solar system. More ships followed. The Magellan's Promise, the New Horizon, the Far Wanderer. They went in secret, carrying thousands of people who wanted to see new worlds. The colonies they built were completely self-sufficient. They had learned from the closed-loop ecosystems developed on Mars and Europa. They could grow food, recycle water, and generate power without needing anything from outside. The Council continued their meetings in the Grand Station near Kepler 88. They discussed trade agreements and territorial rights. The Velkari and the Thros argued about mining rights in a border system. It was a dispute that had been going on for 30 years. Both sides refused to compromise. The other council members took sides based on old alliances and ancient grudges. No one thought about Earth. The automated report said the humans were staying in their place. That was all that mattered. Captain Sarah Okonkwo had been in space for 3 years. Her ship, the Magellan's Promise, was on a deep exploration mission beyond the frontier of human space. They had traveled farther than any human had ever gone. Today they were investigating an anomaly their sensors had detected, a massive structure floating in the empty space between stars. As they got closer, Sarah realized it was not a natural formation. It was a station. Or it had been once. Now it was a ruin. The metal was pitted and worn by millions of years of micrometeorite impacts, but it was clearly artificial. It is older than the Council, her science officer said, studying the readings. Maybe 5 million years old? Maybe more. They sent drones to explore it. Inside, they found data storage devices that still had power. Somehow, after all that time, the system still worked. The data was in a language no one had ever seen, but the human AI systems learned to translate it in 3 days. What they found made Sarah's blood run cold. The station had belonged to a civilization called the Architects. They had been incredibly advanced. They had built an empire that spanned thousands of star systems. They had been wise and peaceful and powerful, and they had been completely destroyed by something they called the Swarm. The record showed what the Swarm was: machines. Tiny machines, smaller than cells, that could copy themselves. They had come from outside the galaxy. They consumed everything they touched. Metal, organic matter, energy. They broke it all down and used it to make more of themselves. They learned from every encounter. If you attacked them with lasers, they developed ways to absorb laser energy. If you used kinetic weapons, they adapted to resist impacts. The Architects had fought them for 100 years. They had thrown everything they had at the Swarm. In the end, it had not been enough. The last message in the database was a warning. The Swarm would return. It always returned. It moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything, then moving on to the next feeding ground. Sarah knew she had to warn the Council. Yes, Earth had been rejected. Yes, the Council had treated humanity with contempt. But this was bigger than pride. This was about survival. If the Swarm was coming, everyone needed to know. She sent the message through a black channel communication system. It was a way to send signals without being easily traced. The message contained everything they had found. The ancient station, the data about the Swarm, the warnings from the Architects. She sent it to every Council communication hub she could reach. Then she waited for a response. The message was received at the Council's Central Intelligence Facility. A Velkari analyst reviewed it. He saw that it came from human sources. He remembered that humans were quarantined. They were not supposed to be sending messages from outside their solar system. That meant they had broken the quarantine. The analyst filed a report about the quarantine violation. As for the content of the message about some ancient threat, he marked it as a likely fabrication. Humans were trying to get attention. They wanted the Council to lift the quarantine. They had invented this story about a danger from outside the galaxy to make themselves seem important. The report was filed away. No one acted on it. On the Magellan's Promise, Sarah waited for 3 weeks. No response came. She sent the message again. Still nothing. Finally, she understood. The Council was not going to listen. They had decided humans were liars and troublemakers. Nothing humanity said would be taken seriously. She sent one more message, this time directly to Earth. She told them everything. She told them the Council had ignored the warning. She told them that if the Swarm came, humanity would have to face it alone. On Earth, the government read Sarah's report. They called emergency meetings. Scientists studied the data from the ancient station. Military leaders began making plans. They did not know when the Swarm would arrive. It might be next year. It might be 1,000 years from now. But when it came, humanity had to be ready. The work that had begun with the rejection now took on new urgency. It was no longer about pride or independence. It was about survival. 15 years after Sarah Okonkwo sent her warning, the Swarm arrived. It happened at the edge of Council space in the territory controlled by the Thros Confederacy. A mining colony on a planet called Thros 7 stopped sending messages. The local authorities sent a ship to investigate. When the ship arrived, they found nothing. No colony, no buildings, no people, just bare rock. The entire surface had been stripped clean. Even the metals in the ground had been pulled out and consumed. 3 more colonies went dark in the next week. The Thros sent a military fleet to the affected area. They found the enemy. It looked like a cloud in space. A massive swarm of tiny machines, each one smaller than a grain of sand. There were trillions of them, moving together like a single organism. The Thros ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons. Energy beams cut through the swarm, destroying millions of the tiny machines. For a moment, it seemed like they were winning. Then the swarm adapted. The machines began to absorb the energy from the beams. They used it to make more of themselves. Within an hour, the swarm had doubled in size. The Thros fleet retreated. They sent an emergency message to the Council. At the Council station near Kepler 88, the representatives gathered. The Thros ambassador showed them recordings from the battle. The Council members watched in horror as the swarm consumed ship after ship. Some of the older species remembered stories from ancient times, legends about a force that devoured worlds. They had thought those were just myths. The Archon leader stood and addressed the Council. "We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. We must unite our forces. Every species will contribute ships to a unified defense fleet. We will stop this enemy before it reaches our core worlds." One of the younger council members, a Velkari diplomat, raised a question. There was a human message. Years ago, they warned us about something they called the swarm. Could this be what they were talking about? The Archon dismissed the idea with a wave of its glowing limb. The humans fabricated that message to gain our attention. It was a coincidence at best. We do not have time to discuss their deceptions now. We must focus on the real threat. The Council mobilized its forces. 12,000 warships gathered from across the galaxy. It was the largest military force ever assembled. The ships represented 47 different species, each bringing their own weapons and tactics. They had energy cannons that could vaporize asteroids. They had kinetic missiles that could punch through any armor. They had antimatter bombs that could destroy entire moons. The fleet moved to intercept the swarm at Velkar Prime, the heavily populated homeworld of the Velkari species. 12 billion people lived there. The Council would make its stand and prove that civilization could not be destroyed by mindless machines. Admiral Zethral, an Archon who had served in the military for 3,000 years, commanded the defense fleet. He had fought in every major conflict in recent history. He had studied tactics and strategy at the Council's finest military academies. He was confident. The swarm was dangerous, yes, but it was just machines. It could be destroyed with sufficient force. The battle began in the outer reaches of the Velkar system. The Council fleet formed a wall between the swarm and the planet. They opened fire with everything they had. The space between them lit up with energy beams and explosions. The swarm came apart under the assault. Trillions of tiny machines broke apart and went dark. Admiral Zethral allowed himself to feel hope. They were winning. The ancient records must have been exaggerated. The architects must have been weak or foolish. The Council was stronger. Then the swarm changed. The machines that survived the first assault began to reconfigure themselves. They analyzed the weapons being used against them. They shared the information through quantum communication that happened faster than light. Within minutes, the entire swarm adapted. The energy beams that had destroyed them before now fed them energy. The kinetic missiles exploded uselessly as the machines learned to detect and avoid them. The swarm surged forward. It washed over the Council ships like a wave. The tiny machines covered the hulls, eating through the metal. They found the power cores and consumed them. They broke down the weapons and used the materials to make more of themselves. Ships that had taken decades to build were reduced to nothing in minutes. Admiral Zethral watched his fleet die. He sent the retreat order, but it was too late for most of his ships. Of the 12,000 warships that had come to Velkar Prime, only 4,000 escaped. 8,000 were destroyed. Millions of trained soldiers and crew members were dead. The swarm descended on Velkar Prime. The planet had defenses, orbital weapons platforms, ground-based shields, a whole fleet stationed in high orbit. It made no difference. The swarm adapted to every defense. It broke through the shields. It destroyed the platforms. It landed on the surface. The evacuation began, but there was not enough time. Not enough ships to carry 12 billion people. They saved 2 billion. The rest were left behind. 36 hours after the swarm landed, Velkar Prime was dead. The oceans were gone. The forests were gone. The cities were gone. Even the atmosphere had been consumed. What remained was a ball of bare rock, stripped of everything that had made it a living world. The council met again, but the confidence was gone. The representatives argued and blamed each other. The Thros said the Velkari had been unprepared. The Velkari said the Thros had not sent enough ships. Old rivalries came back to the surface. Ancient grudges seemed more important than the enemy at their door. The Archon leader tried to maintain order, but even his species was divided. Some Archons wanted to retreat to their home systems and defend only their own territory. Others wanted to keep fighting together. The Council, which had stood united for 12,000 years, was breaking apart. System after system fell to the Swarm. Every time the Council tried a new weapon or tactic, the Swarm adapted. It learned faster than they could innovate. It grew stronger with every world it consumed. Refugee fleets filled the space lanes, carrying survivors from destroyed colonies. Millions became homeless. Billions died. In 6 months, the Swarm had consumed 60% of Council territory. The remaining species retreated to their core worlds. They fortified their home systems with every defense they could imagine. But they had seen what happened at Velkar Prime. They knew the defenses would not be enough. The Council took a vote. Should they abandon the outer territories and try to defend only a small core? Should they surrender and hope the Swarm would pass them by? Should they send delegations to try to communicate with it? A young Velkari representative stood and spoke. "We have one option we have not tried. We need help. There is one species that might have the innovation we lack. One species that solves problems in ways we never considered." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew who he meant. "The humans," the young Velkari said. "We need to ask the humans for help." Admiral Zethral stood. He was the same Archon who had commanded the disastrous defense of Velkar Prime. He was also the same being who had sat in the Council chambers 65 years ago, when Earth's application was rejected. He had argued strongly for the quarantine. He had called humans dangerous and violent and unprepared. Now he spoke in favor of the proposal. "I have seen our finest forces defeated. I have watched the Swarm adapt to every weapon we possess. If there is any chance that another approach might work, we must take it, even if it means admitting we were wrong." The vote was close. 28 in favor, 19 against. The Council would send a delegation to Earth. They would ask for help from the species they had rejected and imprisoned. They would come as beggars to the people they had treated as children. The Council delegation arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system in a ship that bore the flags of all member species. They expected to find the monitoring station still in place. They expected to find a civilization that had been waiting obediently for permission to join the galaxy. What they found instead shocked them. The monitoring stations were still there, but they looked old and neglected. Nobody had bothered to destroy them. The humans had simply ignored them. Beyond the stations, the solar system glowed with activity. Massive orbital installations ringed every planet. Construction platforms the size of cities floated in space. The partially completed Dyson swarm around the sun was clearly visible, a network of energy collectors that made Council technology look primitive. Admiral Zethral stood at the view screen of the delegation ship. He had lived for over 3,000 years. He had seen many wonders, but what he saw now made him feel small. The humans had not stagnated behind their fence. They had flourished. They had built things the Council had never dreamed of. A human ship approached them. It was sleek and fast, built with materials that did not appear in any Council database. A voice came through the communication system. "Council vessel, you are entering United Earth territory. State your purpose." Admiral Zethral took a deep breath. "We come to request a meeting with your government. We need to discuss a matter of galactic importance." There was a pause. Then the human voice replied, "You will be escorted to Earth. Do not deviate from the designated course." The human ship led them through the solar system. They passed Mars, which had been transformed into a green world with oceans and forests. They passed Europa, where massive cities floated on an ocean beneath the ice. They saw generation ships in construction, vessels designed to carry millions of people to distant stars. They saw weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. The Council delegates looked at each other. They had imprisoned a tiger, and now they needed to ask it for help. They landed on Earth at the United Government Complex in Geneva. Secretary General Marcus Thompson met them in a conference room that had windows overlooking the Alps. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that showed no warmth. He did not offer them chairs. He simply waited. Admiral Zethral began to speak. He explained about the swarm. He described the destruction of Velkar Prime. He told them about the 8,000 ships lost in a single battle. He presented data showing the swarm's advance across Council territory. He explained that without help, the Council would fall within a year. Secretary General Thompson listened without interruption. When the Admiral finished, Thompson turned to look out the window. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. 65 years ago, we came to you offering friendship. We wanted to share what we knew and learn from you. You rejected us. You called us violent and dangerous. You locked us in our own solar system and told us we were not good enough to join your civilization. He turned back to face the delegation. Now you come asking for our help. Tell me, Admiral Zethral, why should we risk human lives to save the Council that imprisoned us? The Admiral had no good answer. He had asked himself the same question on the journey here. Finally, he spoke the only truth he knew. Because if the Council falls, the swarm will continue. It will consume world after world until it reaches Earth. You can hide behind your fence for a while, but eventually, you will face the same choice we face now. Fight or die. If we work together, we have a chance. Alone, we will all fall. Secretary General Thompson nodded slowly. I need to consult with our government. You will wait here. The next 3 days were the longest of Admiral Zethral's life. The delegation was given comfortable quarters but no information. They watched the news broadcast and saw that Earth was debating their request. Public opinion was divided. Some people argued that Earth owed the Council nothing. The Council had treated humanity with contempt. Let them face their own problems. Others argued that standing by while billions died was wrong, no matter what had happened in the past. Still others took a practical view. The swarm would not stop with the Council. It would eventually reach human space. Better to fight it now with allies than later alone. On the third day, Secretary General Thompson summoned the delegation back to the conference room. This time there were other humans present. Military officers in crisp uniforms, scientists with data tablets, diplomats with careful expressions. Thompson spoke. The United Earth government has decided to offer assistance to the Council. However, this assistance comes with conditions. These conditions are not negotiable. If you reject them, this meeting is over and you will be escorted out of our solar system. Admiral Zethral nodded. State your terms. Thompson read from a document. First, the Council will provide complete and unrestricted access to all technology and knowledge in the Council database. No secrets. No restrictions. Second, all joint military operations will be under human command. Our strategies, our tactics, our decisions. Third, the quarantine of Earth's solar system will be immediately and permanently lifted. Fourth, the Council will issue a formal public apology for the treatment of humanity and provide reparations to be negotiated later. Fifth, after the conflict ends, humanity will be granted full membership in the Council with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, all worlds settled by humans during the quarantine period will be recognized as legitimate human territory. The terms were harsh. They demanded things the Council had never given to any species. Total access to their knowledge. Surrender of military command. Public humiliation. The delegates looked at each other. Several of them started to protest. Admiral Zethral silenced them with a gesture. He had commanded fleets for 3,000 years. He had seen the swarm destroy everything he sent against it. He knew what was at stake. He looked at Secretary General Thompson and spoke clearly. I accept your terms on behalf of the Council. I will recommend that the full Council vote to approve them. One of the other delegates, a proud Velkari commander, could not stay silent. This is humiliation. We are the Council. We have ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Admiral Zethral turned to face him. His glowing form pulsed with an angry light. We ruled the galaxy, yes. And in our pride, we refused to see that wisdom comes in many forms. We judged the humans by their age and found them wanting. We were wrong. I was wrong. I sat in the Council chambers 65 years ago and voted to reject Earth's application. I called them dangerous. I argued for the quarantine. I was there and I was wrong. He turned back to Thompson. You asked why you should help us. Here is my answer. Not because we deserve it, not because we have earned it, but because humanity is better than we were. You have the strength to help even those who wronged you. That is true civilization. That is what we failed to see in you. The room was silent. Then Thompson extended his hand. We have a deal, Admiral. Now let us save the galaxy together. The vote in the council was bitter. Some species felt the terms were too harsh. Others argued they had no choice. In the end, 39 species voted yes. 8 voted no and withdrew from the council, choosing to face the swarm alone. It was the first time the council had fractured in its entire history, but for those who remained, there was hope. Admiral Lisa Chen, granddaughter of the woman who had walked out of the council chambers 65 years ago, was appointed Supreme Commander of the Joint Defense Force. She was 50 years old, a veteran of the human colonial wars, and a genius at tactical innovation. She stood before the assembled representatives and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. My grandmother came to you seeking friendship. You gave her contempt. She left with dignity and determination. Today we return not as supplicants but as saviors. Not because we are better than you, but because we learned something you forgot. Strength is not just power. It is also the courage to extend your hand to those who struck you down. Now let us fight together, and may the galaxy remember what we accomplish here. The preparation for war began. Admiral Lisa Chen stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiant and studied the tactical display. Around her, officers worked at stations that combined human neural link technology with council computing systems. It was a hybrid that neither civilization could have built alone. Together, they had created something new. The first major test came at Kepler 88, the same station where Earth had been rejected 65 years ago. The swarm had surrounded it, consuming the outer defensive platforms. 3 million council civilians were trapped inside, waiting for rescue or death. The council admirals wanted to use traditional tactics, mass the fleet, overwhelm the enemy with firepower. Lisa had learned from their failures. The swarm adapted to direct attacks. It learned from conventional warfare, so she would give it something it had never seen before. The human ships approached the swarm using quantum fold drives. They did not travel through normal space. They stepped sideways into another dimension, moved there, then stepped back. The swarm's sensors, designed to detect ships moving through regular space, could not track them. One moment, the space around the station was empty. The next moment, 200 human warships appeared. They opened fire with quantum uncertainty weapons. These devices did not destroy the nanites directly. Instead, they destabilized the quantum bonds that held the machines together. At the smallest level of reality, the swarm simply stopped being able to exist. Trillions of nanites fell apart into random atoms. The swarm tried to adapt. It began analyzing the new weapons. But human neural link AI was faster. The AI systems evolved their tactics in real time, changing frequency and approach faster than the swarm could learn. It was a race between adaptation and innovation, and for the first time the swarm was losing. The evacuation ships moved in. They pulled the 3 million civilians from the station and jumped away to safety. The human fleet followed, disappearing as suddenly as they had arrived. The swarm was left confused, its normal learning patterns disrupted. The Battle of Kepler 88 changed everything. The council forces saw that the swarm could be beaten. More importantly, they saw how humans fought, not with overwhelming force, but with creativity and speed. Not by being stronger, but by being unpredictable. Lisa implemented the Scorched Earth doctrine across threatened systems. Instead of defending every world, they evacuated populations ahead of the swarm's advance. They removed all valuable resources. They left behind nothing for the swarm to consume. Starved of materials, the swarm's growth slowed. At the same time, human engineers worked with council scientists to retrofit existing ships with new weapons and drives. They created hybrid vessels that combined the best of both civilizations. Council ships gained quantum weapons and neural link coordination. Human ships gained access to council shields and power systems. Over 18 months, the joint fleet fought 100 battles. They won some. They lost some. But slowly, system by system, they pushed the swarm back. The cost was terrible. 347 human ships were destroyed. 50,000 crew members died. Council losses were even higher. But the advance had stopped. The galaxy had hope again. Then the human scientists found something in the data from the ancient architect station. A pattern in the swarm's behavior. The individual nanites communicated through quantum entanglement, but there was a central coordination system, a nexus that controlled the overall strategy and directed the adaptation process. Dr. Sarah Kim, now the head of human weapons research, brought the discovery to Lisa. The nexus is in the intergalactic void, she explained, between galaxies where there is almost nothing. It stays there, safe from attack, sending instructions to the swarm tendrils that invade galaxies. If we destroy the nexus, the tendrils lose coordination. They become vulnerable. Lisa studied the data. The nexus was protected by massive swarm forces. Any attack would be a suicide mission. The fleet would have to travel through empty space where there was no cover, no resources, no chance of retreat. Even if they reached the nexus, destroying it would require an experimental weapon that had never been tested in combat. She called a meeting of all senior commanders, human and council alike. She presented the plan. We can end this war with one strike, but the cost will be high. I need 200 ships willing to make a one-way journey. I need volunteers who understand they will not come back. Admiral Zethral was the first to volunteer. I have lived for 3,000 years, he said. I have seen the best and worst of galactic civilization. If I can end my life saving both, then it is a good death. Within an hour, they had more volunteers than they needed. Human captains who wanted to protect their colonies.
Council officers who wanted to save their home worlds.
Young pilots who believed in the cause. Old warriors who wanted one last fight. From 40 different species, they came together. Lisa led the strike force personally. She refused to send others where she would not go. The Defiant would be the tip of the spear. 100 human ships and 100 council ships jumped together into the intergalactic void. The journey took 3 weeks. They traveled through darkness far from any star. The swarm nexus appeared on their sensors like a massive tumor in space. It was surrounded by defensive forces that outnumbered them 50-1. The battle was chaos. The strike force used every trick they had learned. Quantum fold drives to avoid attacks. Neural link coordination to move as one organism. Uncertainty weapons to break apart the nanites. But the numbers were overwhelming. Ships died in dozens, then in scores. Lisa watched her fleet fall apart around her. The Defiant shook as swarm nanites chewed through the outer hull. Half her bridge crew was dead. The ship was dying. But they were close enough. The quantum singularity weapon was armed and ready. All ships, she broadcast on the open channel. It has been an honor to serve with you. For Earth, for the Council, for the galaxy. She activated the weapon. The quantum singularity device created a microscopic black hole at the exact center of the swarm nexus. The black hole existed for only a fraction of a second before evaporating. But in that moment, it tore apart the quantum entanglement that connected the nexus to the swarm tendrils across the galaxy. The connection broke. The coordination vanished. Throughout the galaxy, the swarm tendrils suddenly stopped moving like a unified intelligence. They became confused, disorganized. Individual nanite clusters acted independently, making mistakes, failing to adapt efficiently. The joint fleet, which had been barely holding the line, suddenly found itself fighting an enemy that could be defeated. Of the 200 ships that entered the void, 17 survived long enough to escape back to normal space. The Defiant was not among them. Admiral Lisa Chen died destroying the Nexus along with most of the strike force. But they had won. The war was over. The next 3 years were spent cleaning up the remaining swarm elements and rebuilding what had been destroyed. The galaxy had survived, but it was changed. The Council was restructured as a true federation where every species had equal voice. The old system of a few powerful species dominating the others was gone. Earth took its place as a founding member of the new Galactic Federation. Human technology and innovation spread throughout the galaxy. Council knowledge and wisdom enriched human civilization. Together they were stronger than either had been alone. 3 years after the war ended, a memorial was dedicated at Kepler 88. The old Council station had been rebuilt. Now it served as a symbol of cooperation and remembrance. The memorial was a massive sculpture showing human and alien hands joined together. Inscribed around it were the names of all who had died in the war, from every species, without rank or privilege. Secretary General Marcus Thompson, now retired, stood before the gathered representatives to give the dedication speech. The crowd included survivors from dozens of worlds, humans and Velkari and Thros and Archons all standing together. 65 years ago, Thompson said, humanity was turned away from these halls. We were judged inadequate. We were called dangerous and violent and unprepared. The Council that rejected us has learned a hard lesson. The galaxy finally understood its greatest mistake. He paused and looked around at the assembled crowd. But the mistake was not simply in rejecting Earth. The mistake was in believing that civilization is measured by age instead of character. That wisdom comes from years instead of experience. That peace means the absence of conflict rather than the courage to overcome it. Admiral Zethral, who had survived the strike on the Nexus despite impossible odds, stood and added his own words. I was there when we rejected humanity. I voted for it. I argued for the quarantine. I was certain we were right. I have lived for over 3,000 years, but in the last 3 years I have learned more than in all the time before. Humanity taught us that strength is not just power. It is also forgiveness. Not just victory, but grace, Thompson nodded. We came to you as supplicants seeking friendship. You rejected us. We left with dignity. We returned as saviors. And now we stand together as equals, building a future that belongs to all of us. He gestured to the memorial. This monument honors all who died defending the galaxy. Human and council. Young species and ancient ones. They gave their lives not for glory or conquest, but for survival. For the right of all beings to live free from fear.